you guys, Flickers of Fear time. Time for us to talk about yet another horror movie. Now, this is one that a lot of people had recommended to me, and a lot of people, I'd seen it like on a lot of different people's lists and shit like that. A lot of kind of like, why haven't I heard about this movie? This is so great. It's kind of like an unseen gem or something like that. I've seen it called a slasher movie. I would call it more like survival horror. This came out back in 2008, and it's British, and it's called Eden Lake. And it actually got kind of some big names in it. Michael Fassbender is in it. This was this was like before Prometheus, so I guess this was kind of like before he was super, super famous, at least in the United States. So it's like interesting to see him in a smaller film like this. What is essentially, like I said, a survival horror piece. And it's interesting too, I had never heard of this, but now that it exists, it's really funny to me. So I guess that there is a subgenre of British horror. It's not massive or anything like that. There's like a few movies in it, but it's called Hoodie Horror, where it's basically like you're having these things where a bunch of kind of like working class thug type teens, or chavs in the British parlance, are terrorizing, nice middle class people or whatever. And this definitely falls into that camp. That said, though, this movie, it's good. It's like a really simple premise, like a lot of these kind of movies are. It's very gruesome. It's very brutal. It's not like gory, but it's really, really violent. And like a lot of the violence is like really, really visceral. And as I said, it's pretty much just like a straight ahead chase survival in the woods type of movie. But like I said, shit doesn't have to be complicated to be good. This was actually very scary, had a lot of like tension to it. It was just really, really well done, well shot. The writer and director on this was James Watkins, who also did The Woman in Black, the one with Daniel Radcliffe in it, because it's been made a couple of times. It's, the adaptation of the novel. I'm pretty sure I did a book review. I don't think I talked about the movie yet, though, but I actually did like that Daniel Radcliffe, adaptation. This is completely opposite to that. Whereas The Woman in Black was much more like a very staid English ghost story, and I like those too. This is very much like just a brutal, fast-paced, action-packed, gory, bloody, violent, survival horror. In the tradition of British films since time immemorial, the ending is like super, super bleak. I don't know. I guess I'll probably say what happens at the end, because like I said, this isn't a brand new movie. It came out back in 2008, so it's quite old. And this is actually a pretty easy movie to get hold of. I believe I watched it on Tubi, and I think it's on a couple of other streaming services as well. So, but like I said, if you don't have any other streaming services, you can watch it for free on Tubi, at least in the United States. So, if you want to go check it out, definitely go check it out, because it's really, really worth it. So what the setup for this is, Michael Fassbender plays a dude named Steve, and Kelly Reilly plays his girlfriend named Jenny, who is I guess she's like a nursery school teacher, elementary school teacher, something like that. So it's kind of like, it starts out on a Friday, and she's kind of saying goodbye to all her students and everything. It's like, have a good weekend, whatever. So it's established kind of early on that he's going to take her out, they're going out for the weekend. They're going camping to this lake. Although it's not actually a lake, it's just kind of like, it's like a flooded quarry type situation. And he's basically like, oh, okay, well, this section, where this lake is, they're actually going to fill in the lake, and they're going to put kind of like high-end homes there. And it's such a beautiful location, and it's such a shame that they're going to like pave it all over and put houses. So this will probably be like the last time that we can go there and see all this natural beauty before they build fancy houses all over it. So she kind of like makes a lot of jokes about, my best friend, like her, boyfriend's taking her to Paris for the weekend, but okay, we're going to some flooded quarry. But she's not being like mean about it. But he's like, no, it's super beautiful. Wait till you see it. And he's also, unbeknownst to her, planning to propose. So he's got like the engagement ring and everything like that. So now before they get to the site, there's some kind of foreshadowing in the sense of they stop at this place. I guess it's kind of like, I didn't know if it's like a hotel or like an inn or like somewhere where they can eat or something like that. And it's kind of like there's kind of all these sort of trashy ass people staying there. A bunch of screaming teenagers and screaming kids and a bunch of like kind of boorish, adults. And it's kind of funny because him and the girlfriend are like sitting at a bench, like eat or drinking a beer or whatever. and one of this kid is like screaming his head off. And Steve says at one point, he's like, man, that kid could use a real smack. And then, like, you know, the mom, like, smacks the kid. And then he's kind of, like, makes this face like, wait, did I actually, like, want for that to happen? Because it totally just did. At least to shut the kid up, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, so, because this is kind of like I said, a hoodie horror in the sense that it's, like, teenagers that are being the victimizers. So I think this was a really good kind of economical way of setting up, you know, the kind of area that this is. And I will say too that even though this movie seemed to have gotten like largely, you know, 85% positive reviews, in the British press, some felt that the movie kind of demonized the working classes. I can see that, but I don't really, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it demonizes the working classes any more than, you know, like an American film like The Hills Have Eyes or something like that. Because, I mean, obviously they're not saying all working class people are like this. It's just like this one area, these people are kind of like shitty. And so I didn't really, you know, I didn't really like think that it was making a statement on all working class people as a whole. It was just talking about this particular type of working class person, you know, that is just these kind of thuggish, child abusing, you know what I mean? Just these kind of trashy ass people. That was just kind of like that. And that's kind of what this area was, like a lot of people that live there. So they kind of like stay at this place, you know, pub, tavern, whatever it is. And then like the next morning they set out and they go to the site. And it is beautiful, although, I mean, if it was me, I'd have been like, yeah, I think I would have rather gone to Paris instead, because it's like, it's basically just a lake. I'm like, it's nice, but I've seen those, you know what I mean? It's not mind-blowing or anything. It's not the Grand Canyon or anything like that, but okay. So he's like a cheapskate, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of what I thought. So they kind of go and like they lay on the beach and they get everything set up and whatever, and they're like, oh my god, it's so awesome and so idyllic and everything. Now I will say too that there's a little bit of more foreshadowing when they actually get to the place. And they kind of find this kid in the woods who looks like he's collecting bugs or something like that. He's supposed to be like, say, like a nerdy kid or whatever. And he's like collecting bugs and he's like writing stuff down. And they're just, you know, she's a teacher. She's like, hey, what you doing or whatever. And he won't answer. And then he's just like, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. You know what I mean? She's just like, yeah, you're right. Okay, so we'll just leave you alone then. Bye. So they just kind of take off. So like I said, they go to this beach. They kind of set everything up. They're laying there. It's lovely. They're having a wonderful time. They start making out and all this other shit. And then a whole bunch of rowdy ass, annoying ass teenagers show up, mostly boys of, you know, varying ages from maybe like 12 to 16, somewhere around there. And one girl who I think is that same chick that was on Game of Thrones. I can't remember, was she like one of the, I can't remember like, what character she played. It was because I haven't watched Game of Thrones, but I just know because I've seen her face like in the memes and stuff. So yeah, so later she would be in Game of Thrones. But yeah, she was in this. So it's like a bunch of teenagers. They're doing obnoxious teenager shit. Like, you know, they have really loud music on and they're all like screaming at each other and like, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of crap. And I'm just like, I'm like, oh my God, I hope all these kids die. But you know, which is probably not the intent of the filmmakers. It's always, but every time I see these movies, these kind of like kids gone bad movies. And I've done like, you know, I've seen a lot of movies like that. And I've even read some books where, you know, I've reviewed like, you know, Baby Teeth and, you know, books like that. And then like movies like, you know, We Need to Talk About Kevin and stuff, where it's just kind of like they're trying to set up, it's like, oh, a child and they're so innocent. And what happens like when they're sociopaths? I'm like, I don't like, just because they're a kid, I just feel like at some point you just kind of like, yeah, you just need to go. I'm sorry. And these kids are definitely kind of like that, because these kids are just sucky. It's like most of them, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like a group, like a Lord of the Fliesy type of situation, I guess. But one of them is clearly like the lead psycho, and the other ones are just kind of like coming along for the ride, but once it starts to go too far, they're just kind of like, oh man, we can't do this anymore. And, you know, and it gets to a point where they can't really back out. But still, I mean, they're all just really obnoxious, and I don't have a lot of patience for that. So I'm just kind of like, as soon as I saw them like all acting up like that, I'm just like, just drown, whatever. They also have like a Rottweiler, because of course they do. And you know what I mean? It's just, that's just really like such an on the nose type of thing. But yeah, so they have that, and it's like, they're not directly like fucking with the couple, but they're just kind of like looking over there. They're looking at them through binoculars, and they're just being obnoxious. I mean, if it was me, I would have just like just gotten up and left and just gone somewhere else. But of course, Michael Fassbender, or Steve is the character's name, he just thinks he's going to go over there because he's the adult and they're the teenagers. He's just going to go over there and say, hey, you know, can you keep it down? Like, bro, that's not going to work out the way you think it's going to. They're just going to go, yeah, fuck you. What are you going to do? And that's exactly what happens. So I think that Steve was really, a lot of his decisions, if he'd have just like ignored them or just like got up and left and they just like went somewhere else, like none of the shit in this movie would have happened. So probably he should have done that, but for whatever reason, and I guess that's kind of like part of his character was that, well, I'm the adult and I should be able to, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like I should be able to like tell them to shut up and they should do it because they're kids. But I was like, do you not know how teenagers work? Or, you know what I mean? And there's more of them than you know what I mean? You're just one dude and one lady, and there are like 5 or 6 of them, you know, and some of them are like not kids, they're like teenagers. So like 16-year-olds. So probably they could just beat you to death and probably you should just like leave it alone. But the fact that he won't leave it alone really leads to tragedy in this movie. So like I said, he goes over there, tells them to like, hey, can you knock it off? And of course they say, fuck off, we're not going to. And there's like, at that point, there's like nothing more he can do, so they just go back over there and sit down. You know, so, and they just kind of put up with it. And then finally, like, the obnoxious teens, like, leave, and of course they have to, like, walk through, like, right through, like, Steve and Jenny's camp because they're dicks. But, you know, Steve and Jenny are like, oh, finally, like, at last they're gone. So they set up their tent and they sleep. And then there's kind of like a scene at night where you kind of think they came back and it's just kind of like this whole other thing. And that's like really creepy and everything, but it's fine. The next morning they get up and like they brought some food and they open the cooler and it's like all full of bugs. I don't know if the kids put the bugs in there or if they just didn't have it sealed properly or whatever. But so they don't have anything to eat, so they have to go like drive back into town for breakfast. And while they're doing that, they go to this diner and, you know, they kind of say something about the obnoxious teens or whatever to the waitress. And I'm just like, dude, keep your mouth shut, because that waitress is probably like one of their moms or something, which it does kind of like, you know, this is like a small town, so they all kind of know each other. I'm just like, yeah, just put the kibosh on that. Might not want to let it known that, hey, we're kind of these like Ponzi middle class people that are in this like basically savage town full of like working class savages. So it's like, you know, just kind of keep a low profile is all I'm saying. They don't know how to read the room. He doesn't know how to read the room. Because, I mean, the whole time, Jenny, who is a teacher and has experience with kids, although much younger ones, she's just kind of like, just like, shut up. You know what I mean? But he just won't because I don't know why. So while they're going back to the campsite, he sees a house and he sees like all these bicycles like in the front yard that belong to the kids from the day before. So again, he could just leave it alone, and Jenny tells him, hey, just leave it alone, just let it go. But of course he won't. He goes up to these people's house, like blocks their driveway for real, parks in front of their house, and is like, hey, you stay in the car, I'm gonna go inside and talk to their parents. I'm like, that's not gonna go well either, because obviously these kids are assholes, obviously they were raised by assholes, and this is also not gonna go the way you think it's gonna go. So he goes in the house, just straight up walks in there because the door is unlocked, and he doesn't find anybody. But then like the dad comes home and he has to like climb out the window. It's this whole situation. So it's like nothing really gets done about that. So then she's just like, okay, fine. Can we just, and then she gets yelled at by the dad because she's blocking the driveway when he comes home. So it's like this big like hostile situation. So basically after that, they're going to stay another night. And what ends up happening there is that I guess she kind of falls asleep and Steve goes out scuba diving. So he's not really watching the campsite. And so while that's happening, Steve comes back and then they notice that their beach bag is gone. And their beach bag had their phone and his wallet and the car keys. And then when they go back to where the car is parked, they discover that indeed the fucking obnoxious teens have stolen their car. So basically, he goes to try to like find him. He's like, they couldn't have gone far. So he goes and he actually finds them. They get into a scuffle and he ends up accidentally stabbing the main psycho's dog, Bonnie, the Rottweiler, he doesn't mean to, but it just kind of happens in the scuffle. So now, of course, like all the kids are like on the fucking warpath because that was the only thing that this kid loved. I guess that's what they were trying to apply. Now, like basically they get their keys, they get the car back, and then, but the kids are like throwing rocks at them and all this other kind of shit. So it's like the windshield breaks, it's like the nighttime and he can't really see where he's going. And so he crashes into a tree. So then they're all like on foot. And then from that point forward, it becomes like a survival horror, like where they're just like running through the woods, they get separated and the kids are like stalking them like through the thing. Now, what ends up happening is that Steve actually gets taken by the kids because, like I said, him and Jenny get separated, and Jenny, like, he's like, you know, go hide and whatever, and she does, and then he gets taken, he gets like tied to a pole, and all the kids like take turns essentially like torturing him, you know, stabbing him in different places, you know, doing like, I think they stab him in the balls, they do, it's all kind of shit that they do. What the main psycho kid does, who I think his name is Brett, and basically, like, even though at this point all the other kids are like, you know, Brett, dude, chill out. It's like, you know what I mean? But Brett's like, well, we've gone too far. We can't go back now. We have to kill him. And I'm going to film each of you doing something to him, like torturing him, you know, I'm gonna film it, so then later, like, so you can't rat on me, because we're all involved at this point. So that's basically what they do. Like I said, it's kind of like this whole back and forth now where, you know, he's all fucked up, but he ends up escaping. Jenny's like trying to run away from them. So it's just kind of like this whole like situation. And like I said, this part was like really, really good, like really tense. It's really, really violent. Like I said, very bloody. There was actually one scene where she was running through the woods, and she has shoes on. She has like little like Converse type tennis shoes or whatever. And she's like running through the woods, and there's like some kind of big spiky something or other like in the grass, and she just like steps in, it goes like all the way through her foot, and I was just like, oh, it was awful. But yeah, so it's a lot of that kind of like very visceral like violence to it. So as I said, it ends up going, and like I said, this came out in 2008, so from this point on, I'm gonna like spoil what happens at the end. Like I said, the third act is pretty much all just like a chase movie through the thing, and it's one of those movies where it just, and I think these are like the best kinds of kind of action thriller survival horror ones where the situation just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And like I said, because this is a British movie, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And then the end is going to be like the fucking, like the fucking worst, bleakest, most depressing thing ever. And indeed, that's what happens in this one, because what ends up happening is that, you know, Steve gets away, like he's, you know, he was tied to this pole or whatever, but he escapes, but he's been stabbed and shit like that so many times that he's like losing too much blood. They actually reunite, and she tries to help him, and she's going to go back into the town and everything like that. But it's just, you know, she's like, I can't carry you with me. We don't have the car anymore because it's all fucked up. So she doesn't really know the way back to town. She finds the nerdy kid from the beginning, and she's like, you gonna show me the way back to town? And he's like, yeah, I totally will. But you pretty much know that even though the bully kids were like picking on him earlier, I kind of suspected, I was like, oh, well, he wants to be one of the cool kids, so he's gonna like try and get in good with them by telling the kids where she is, because they've kind of like lost her in the interim, and that is indeed what happens. So she gets kind of led into an ambush, and then like I said, there's this whole like fucking fight about it. Now somewhere in the interim, Steve dies like from his injuries, and what ends up happening is that the kids like tie Steve and Jenny to a tree, and then they set Steve on fire, which is fucked up. They didn't really think the shit through though, because the fire, which is, you know, burning the body or whatever, it also burns through the rope that's holding her to the tree or whatever, so she gets away. And at which point, like, the kids make kind of a miscalculation, because they put like a tire around the nerdy kid's neck, and then they're like, if you don't come back, we're gonna burn this kid. And she kind of hesitates for a second, because like she said, she's a teacher, so she doesn't want to see a kid get hurt. But I was just kind of like, girl, fuck that kid. He turns you over to the bullies. It's like, you don't owe that brat anything. You know what I mean? It's like, I know he was getting bullied too, but fuck that kid. Seriously, you got to get away from here. So that's indeed what she does. She just takes off and just be like, bye. You know what I mean? So they actually do set the nerdy kid on fire. So again, they're racking up quite a body count. All this shit happens. She actually does end up getting away. She gets back to the road, and flags down a car. Shitty thing is, though, that when she gets in the car, she's like, just take me to town. Oh my God, these kids are like stalking me or whatever. Turns out, like I said, again, this is a very small town. This kid is the brother of one of the gang. And he's basically like, yeah, I'm out here looking for my brother. It's like he was supposed to be home by now. And at which point she's like, oh, fuck me. And so he goes, so she doesn't say anything at first, but like he goes and parks looking for the other kid. And when she sees that kid, the brother gets out of the car and leaves the keys in there, luckily. So she sees like him meeting up with the gang member or whatever. And then she's like, all right, fuck this kid also. And then she just pops over in the driver's seat and is like, bye again. So like I said, she's pretty much the only person making smart decisions in this. Like I said, Steve, her boyfriend, kind of made stupid decisions from the outset. Like I said, if you had just let everything go, I know how annoying it is. You're out on the beach and trying to have like a nice romantic getaway or anything, and like all these stupid chavs show up. I get it, like you want to go over there and say something, but just don't. It's not going to go well. They don't respond well to people asking them to do things. You know what I mean? So just go somewhere else, just live your life and just get on with it. And you would have still been alive, Steve, but no, you just couldn't let it go. You had to keep pushing it. You had to keep going in their house. You had to keep like going to their parents and shit like that. Just don't. A lesson for everybody there. But yeah, so she ends up going in the car and then running over. She sees the girl from Game of Thrones like running the road, and I was just kind of like, hit that bitch. And then she's like, she did, and I was like, yes, all right, this is a girl I can get behind. Because she's like, fuck it, fuck this kid, seriously. So then like she ends up like escaping, and she actually ends up killing one of the other kids too, like the youngest one, not on purpose necessarily, but she just kind of sees one of the kids like stalking up behind her. And this was the kid that was kind of like reluctant, but I still didn't feel bad. Like she felt bad, obviously, because this was like he was 12 or something like that, and he really seemed like he didn't, he wasn't down with all the shit that was going on. But at that point, like, just, dude, I've been through a lot. Don't just like creep up behind me like that. You were with them earlier, so tough shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm just a tough titty. She felt bad. I did not. I was just like, yeah, fuck that kid too. But the thing about it though is that since that kid ends up dying, and since a bunch of kids end up dying, so she gets back, she steals this car and goes back to the first house she comes to, at which a party is going on. And the first thing I thought, she goes in there and they're all like partying in the backyard, and she's all fucked up and covered with blood and crap and just everything. And she's just like, can you help me? And at first they seemed like really helpful, but I said, oh, you know what? I bet these are like the parents of the kids of the gang, you know what I mean? And indeed, that is what happens. And of course, since the apples don't fall too far from the tree, once they find out, like once they get a phone call from one of the still surviving kids in the woods and said, hey, do you know what this bitch did? Because of course they put it all on her. She killed a little blonde kid. She's a serial killer. I don't think they said that, but it's like, that's kind of what they were trying to imply, that it was her fault, that she had started it. She's in this house with all of these hostile people, and it goes about as well as you would expect. They don't actually show what happens to her at the end. It's just like implied, like through sound and stuff, but obviously, these are not the types of people that are going to call the cops, and especially because they think that this woman has killed, the dog and also some of their kids, which she did, but they didn't really, context. There was like context going on, and these people just don't really seem to want to understand that, because these are their children. They're just kids. I'm like, yeah, fuck those kids. You guys are the ones that raised them, and they're all fucked up. But yeah, so this is basically like, and I want to say too that this was very much like her ending up back at the house of the parents of the people she killed is kind of like Last House on the Left, but from the victim's point of view rather than the perp's point of view. So I thought that was kind of cool. That was like a nice inversion, and I'm sure that was probably done on purpose, because like I said, Last House on the Left, which was actually based on the Virgin Spring. Was it Ingmar Bergman? Yeah, I want to say. But so that story was based on that. So I liked that it was kind of an inversion of that. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it was done on purpose. So I liked that about it. But yeah, this is actually, if you like survival horror, it's not doing anything new or anything, but it really is a good, like, just a tension-filled, like, violent, survival horror type of thing. As I said, I think the first part of it, when Michael Fassbender's character, Steve, was still alive, I didn't find him an unrealistic character, but I did find him frustrating because, like I said, but, if he hadn't acted the way he acted, there would have been no movie, because you know, they would have just been like, oh, those kids are obnoxious. Let's get in the car and go someplace else. The end. You know what I mean? So it's like the fact that he just kept, but I don't know. That maybe that is kind of unrealistic, because I feel like anybody else in that situation, once you went over there, which I mean, the first decision to do that, just go over there and tell them, hey, can you keep it down? I wouldn't have done that. I just think that's dumb and it's not going to get what you want. So I wouldn't have even bothered. But even if you did do that, once you've done it twice and they were basically like, yeah, fuck off, you can't tell us what to do, that's pretty much the end of it. You can't do anything else about it unless you're just going to shoot them all in the face. So at that point, it just seems like, okay, well, we'll just leave and go someplace else and have a nice weekend, and then we'll just go home, and that we'll live happily ever after, instead of, you know, being stabbed in the nuts and burned alive. Pretty much, you know, so there's that whole situation. So yeah, so like I said, I did find it, maybe it was slightly unrealistic that he just kept on trying to resolve the situation. But, you know, I've known some people that would probably do that kind of stupid shit. I'm just saying it was really stupid. Like, he made some really dumbass decisions that really led to him getting killed for sure. And probably it's implied that she got killed as well. Even though, like I said, they don't really show it, but she does end up in this house full of hostile people, and they take her off into this other room, and you can hear her like shrieking at the top of her lungs. So I'm sure they did something horrible to her. So, you know, so he got both of them killed. So good job there, Steve, because it was actually all his fault. Because I will say too that it was also his idea to go to this stupid lake in the first place. If they'd have just listened to her and gone someplace else, like to an actual city, instead of out in the middle of fucking nowhere in the woods, where there are a bunch of fucking feral children running around, then maybe everything would have been all right. But, you know, you can't have a horror movie without people making dumbass decisions like that. So yeah, if you like British horror, if you like survival horror, if you like hoodie horror, which I think is really funny. I don't know if I've seen... I don't know. I guess I've seen a couple like that. What was that one? I feel like it was French. I feel like that was like a hoodie horror too, but I feel like it's kind of like a British subgenre. I think, what was that one called? Cherry Tree Lane or something like that. I think that was hoodie horror, and there was like a few other ones, but I don't think I've seen any of them. So this is actually the first British one I've seen. But yeah, I didn't even know that was a subgenre, and I kind of love that. But yeah, so it's, like I said, it's on Tubi if you want to watch it. It's a really, really good, tense, like violent survival horror movie, like in the woods. Like, it's not doing anything original or anything. It just does its simple premise, and it just executes it really, really well. It's just a really disturbing, fast-paced, just like a nasty, you know, ride kind of thing. And that's really good. Like I said, things don't have to be super complicated. If you're going to do a simple story like this, then you need to nail it. And I think this movie really, really does. This is actually a really good one. And like I said, I feel like it doesn't get talked about a huge amount, although I did have a few people recommend it to me. So thank you for that, because I actually, I might not, well, I probably would have got around to watching this, but it would have maybe taken longer if I hadn't gotten more recommendations for it. But yeah, this is a good one. Eden Lake from 2008. Go check it out. And I will see you on the next Flickers of Fear. Bye.